Hi everyone, I'm Lulu from Plants by Lulu and welcome on my channel. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button and let's go. So today I'm going to start a new concept. I had this idea for over a year now. I talked about the idea in different videos and today is finally the day I'm going to realize the idea. For the longest time I really wanted to pair a book to a plant. And I'm going to start with that today. I want to preface before we start that this is in no way reflecting the way I have them in my rankings, the books or the plants. If I pair a book and a plant together, it doesn't mean when the book is, for example, in my top 5 favorite books, the plant is also in my top 5 favorite plants. I have paired the books with qualities in mind, like this is going on in the books. Does this have a representation with my experience of the plant? So it's more about the journey you go through in the book with my journey I went through with the plant. Therefore, it is totally based on my experience alone and my thoughts. So it doesn't reflect my rankings of them. It only reflects their journey. If you have your own books and plants that you want to combine, leave it down in the comments below because I'm very curious. But yeah, let's go. So first I will introduce the plant. This is the Epipremnum pinnatum albo variegata. Well, you're probably already very curious with what book I'm going to pair it with. It is A Long Paddle of the Sea by Isabelle Allende. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Isabelle Allende. This book. And besides that, I really love the cover of this edition. I also very much love the story. So the game plan for these types of videos is that I'm going to read the back. I'm going to read a bit about the author. And then I'm going to compare it to my experiences with the plant. Victor Dalmau is a young doctor when he is caught up in the Spanish Civil War. An event that leaves his life and the fate of his country forever changed. Together with his sister-in-law, the pianist Roser, he is forced out of Barcelona and into exile in Chile. There they find themselves enmeshed in a rich web of characters who come together in love and tragedy over the course of 4 generations, destined to witness the battle between freedom and repression as it plays out across the world. So it's a fictional story, but with the factual story of this Spanish Civil War. Now about Allende. Isabelle Allende, novelist, feminist, and philanthropist, is one of the most widely read authors in the world. Born in Peru and raised in Chile, she has authored 26 best-selling books that have been translated into 42 languages and sold more than 74 million copies. She has received the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the National Book Foundation's Medal for Distinguished Contribution to American Letters, along with 15 honorable doctorates. This book has been first published in Spain as Largo Pétalo de Mar, and afterwards it was published in the United States, and after that it was published in England. So, what do I think that this book and the plant have in common? First of all, this plant has been propagated a lot. And to be more specific, I don't know if I can find a photo. If I did, I will insert it. But it started out very, very small. I bought this plant at a pop-up store where one of the organizers were Groen in Huis, which does not exist anymore, but it was a web store. I first trained it to hang, but after I took cuttings, I decided to give away and sell the other cuttings and would train the top cutting to climb. And after that, I think I cut it up 2 more other times. And every time I cut it up, I gave away the cuttings in swaps and I let the top cutting climb. So eventually, this was the last time I cut it. I think it had only the 3 bottom limbs. They're somewhere here. And I decided to put it here and to just let it climb. I'm not cutting it up anytime soon. Over the trajectory of this plant's life, I did not have a vision in mind for this plant, and the vision constantly changed. So for a long time, I really didn't know what I wanted with this plant. And then there were times that I thought strongly about this plant one way or another. And then I switched my mind again, which is why the overall experience is compared to this story, because the way it is told, where you kind of have the feeling they have control, but also they haven't, and that is apparent throughout their lives with the events that happen, but also with the relationships they form, is kind of how my relationship was with this plant. Sometimes I let it just do its thing, sometimes I really didn't know what to do, sometimes I really had strong opinions about it. And you may think that's life. That's why I love it. The complexity of life is discussed in this book through history and through these fictional characters. This story is about the relationships you form, how they are formed, how deep they are, and why kind of they are that deep. And that's how I interpreted the book. It is also about when you're forced to flee the place you're calling home. And there is kind of an urgency of you have to survive, you have to do this, you have to do that, you can't go back, you have to build up your life again in a different country. You may also think that the trajectory of this plant is normal. Yes and no. Of course you will have ups and downs. Of course you sometimes don't know what you want with the plant. But this is solely based on my experience, and a lot of the times I carefully, before I buy a plant, I already know what I want with it because I research it before I buy it. I have designated places in my homes where I want specific plants or specific type of plants. So it is not common for me and my relationships with plants that this type of relationship occurs. Then to go into a bit more detail, this plant has only had spider mites. That's a positive and a negative thing simultaneously. The positive thing is it had never thrips. And it seems like it is not attracting thrips. But the negative thing is this one has chronically spider mites. I don't really find it annoying because it is better treatable than thrips. And if you have plants over longer periods of time, you know, pests are constantly coming back. So I've made peace with it. But this one is the only one in my care that has really chronically had spider mites. Because this one is the only one in my care, it stands out. So mentally, I'm adding it to its specifications in my house, in my care. And so the fact that when something bad happens or something negatively happens, you can't stop. Of course, you can start over, and that is what I was trying to do sometimes when cutting it up. But because it has it chronically, it is not something you can solve in a short period of time. And it is not chronically in the way that it really bothered the plant that it died. Of course, you can see it is really growing well. So I'm not really bothered by it. But it's still not really fun to deal with. But I have acknowledged that it's part of its life. And that's also why I connected it to this book. Because even now, with everything that is happening in the world, I think war is something that is, I would almost say, human. Okay, editing my do here. I am kind of rambling here. And so I wanted to clarify what I kind of meant by this. It's not that I'm ignorant to war or conflict in that sense, because it's everywhere in the world. However, I think this book, through some storylines, depicts that even though there are wars going, even though there are conflicts going, and even though you have fought in some, or you have rebelled against some viewpoints, or you have tried to do everything, once war really starts and people are captured, instincts are that you have to flee. And that's what the book is about. The fact that even though there are wars, you can't stop living basically until you're shot. So that's what I meant by this whole point. Of course, you can't really compare spider mites to wars, but it kind of, I think, represents for me, not per se the war, but more the loss you take in life, generally. People who die in a war, people who die around you from diseases or chronic illness that you have to deal with. I think the spider mites and the fact that it's chronically represents for me the losses in our lives. Also, I would imagine if you are a plant and you have shown me that you can be placed in every part of the house, because a lot of plants can be placed in every part of the house. A lot of plants, I have specifically chosen that plant in that place because that's the best place for that plant. And this plant have shown me that it can grow in every place in my house, in every light condition. It's not that he is not growing great in those positions. He is thriving everywhere. So he's just adapting and thriving. If you would draw a parallel to humans, I think that shows real growth. And I think, therefore, I paired it with this book, because this book also shows different perspectives throughout the years, because it spans over 4 generations. Main characters that are very young to very old, and their view on their relationships, on their lives, how they acted. And I think that shows also mental growth. I could go on and on about this book and the plant, but I think that those are the main reasons why I paired this book with this plant. I hope this was not too deep or depressing for you guys. I know this is a different side of me. I know this is different content. So if you do like it, please let me know in the comments down below. If you don't like it, please leave that also down below in the comments, because I really want to know what you think of this type of content. If you have any pairings with a plant and a book, if you have any suggestions which book or which plant I should discuss. And for now, I will see you in the next video.